Hi everyone, my name is Casey and I am the Director of Life Enrichment at Bethany, and I am going to talk to you today about our caregiver misconduct process. We're going to talk about the identification, reporting and response, and then protection of us as employees and of course our residents. So our goal our goal and intention is that all of our residents are not subject to abuse by anyone at Bethany, which includes staff, volunteers, other residents, consultants, family friends, guardians, or power of attorneys. We want Bethany to be a very safe place. We want anyone who steps foot onto our campus to feel safe, specifically for our families because they're entrusting us with the care for their loved one. There are four different types of caregiver misconduct. There is abuse, neglect, misappropriation, and exploitation. We are going to talk about each one of them here a little bit closer. So, abuse is probably the most common that you have heard. It's an intentional act that contradicts with our policies and procedures and is not a part of the care plan and is meant to cause harm. So there is verbal abuse, things that we say, threats of harms, things that are intentionally frightening someone. Physical abuse, hitting, slapping, pinching, kicking, causing some sort of physical harm to them. Sexual abuse, this could include harassment, inappropriate touching, or assault. And then there's emotional abuse, humiliation, harassment, intimidation, threats of punishment, depriving them of possessions or of care. Next is neglect. It's a careless or negligent act that fails to follow our policies, procedures, or care plan. This could or has caused pain, injury, or death, but it is not intended to cause harm. So, what's the difference between abuse and neglect? Abuse is you intentionally have the idea that you are going to harm that person in some sort of way. Neglect is more or less, I have no intention of harming them, but I know that it's not right. So, some examples are not using a gait belt when required for transferring a resident, failure to perform range of motion exercises, turning off a call light and leaving the room without answering the concern, leaving a resident wet or soiled, disregarding hydration orders, or failure to deliver or administer medications. Next is misappropriation, an intentional act that is meant to permanently deprive a resident of property or misuses of a resident's personal property and is done without the resident's consent. So this could be theft of cash, checks, credit card, jewelry, high quality items. Misuse of property. I like to date myself and just kind of give an example of like when cell phones before they had unlimited text and talk. You had to wait till like 7 o'clock at night to call someone. Otherwise, you used your minutes. Identity theft or not using their money to pay required bills, but for other situations. So a lot of the time we see this more in the business office, but you as and social services, but you as staff members and floor staff might start seeing kind of some of this stuff. So you want to make sure that you're letting us know. And last but not least, exploitation. Taking advantage of a resident for personal gain through the use of manipulation, intimidation, threats, or coercion. Some examples of this is use of residents' money for personal gain, forcing a resident to do an act for another's personal gain. So really trying to exploit that resident into doing something that you want them to do to make your job easier or so forth. When our when our residents are talking to us, we want to make sure that we are listening for some keywords. And so these are some of the keywords that we have posted throughout the facility that we want you to really hone in and do something if you hear them. So first one is rude. Casey was rude to me this morning during cares. Rough. When Casey was in here and putting me on the lift, she was really rough. And mean. I don't like that, Casey. She is mean to me. When you hear some of these keywords, these should be triggers for you that you should be reporting something. So, what is our role? So, previous to 2010, there were anyone who was in the healthcare field, meaning nurses, doctors, social workers, teachers, firemen, policemen, they were called mandated reporters. After 2010, the Affordable Care Act was introduced, which required facilities to receive more than $10,000 or more in federal funds to adopt the policy. So Bethany does, and we did prior to this. Our goal is to provide policy, procedures, and a means of enforcement for prompt notification of a suspicious crime and protecting. And then, in the event while working as an employee of Bethany, observe any event that causes suspicion of a crime committed against a resident of Bethany home, you are required to report it. So what does that mean? Basically, in a nutshell, you are now a mandated reporter. So because you are going through this training, you have an obligation to our residents and to the staff here at Bethany to report anything that is suspicious to you that just doesn't seem right. So what is your role as a staff member? If you see something, you say something. It's not your role to determine if it's abuse, neglect, misappropriation, or exploitation. Your job is to make sure that you are reporting it to the appropriate people and that you are saying something to protect our residents from any sort of harm that may have happened to them. So, what if you suspect that someone's being abused, neglected, or some other form of caregiver misconduct? Our number one priority is to make sure that the resident is safe and protected. Don't leave the resident alone with the accused or in a situation where they're not safe. So if you hear someone screaming at a resident, quote unquote, don't just assume that they're yelling at the resident. Make sure you're going down and kind of intervening and being like, hey, what's going on? There could be a multitude of reasons that that person may be talking loudly. Maybe they are screaming at the resident, which I hope not. But maybe the resident doesn't have their hearing aids in and they can't really hear very well, so the staff member has to talk loud. Maybe the staff member is just a really loud person. So make sure you are intervening and kind of assessing that situation. We don't want to just make assumptions. If you do feel that the resident something is going on, it is your job then to step in and be like, hey, I think you need to step aside. After that resident is safe, you're going to immediately report it to the person in charge. In the nursing home, that is going to be your floor nurse. In the CBRF and RCAC, that is going to be your supervisor or your lead. And then you can also report it to the administrator or director as well. So when you report a potential incident of abuse, it must be done immediately and it must be done in person. Do not leave a note or a voicemail or an email for someone and say, hey, can you give me a call? I want to talk to you about this situation. Don't go home and think about it and be like, that just didn't sit right. Or tell someone the next day. It is really crucial that you are telling us in real time what has happened. I apologize in advance. I have to update the slide, but it still will give you kind of the idea. During normal business hours, you're going to report to the nurse on the unit. Um, in in the CBRF, you're going to let Kathleen know. In the RCAC, you're going to let Deb know. After normal business hours, again, you're going to tell the nurse on the unit, and then that nurse is then going to call me. Um, in the CBRF, you're going to call, or your lead person is going to call Kathleen. And then if you can't get a hold of Kathleen, you're going to contact myself, Casey. And then same thing in the RCAC, you're going to contact Deb. If you're not able to get a hold of Deb, you're going to contact me. So basically, in any sort of situation, you can always call myself. My number is kind of blasted everywhere. It is also on the forms, which we will be going through shortly. So please, please, I would rather you give me a call and explain the situation and we talk about it than not call me or tell anyone in the first place. So after you report this supposed incident, you witnessed a staff member yelling at a resident, um, and I am informed the nurse is going to do an immediate assessment of the situation. This is going to include a physical and a psychosocial. Even in the CBR and RCAC, we are going to send a nurse over to do a physical and psychosocial assessment. We're going to provide any appropriate treatment. We're then going to talk to the staff member who may be involved and remove them immediately from direct care and potentially send them home until the end of the investigation. We do this for a variety of reasons. This does not mean that you're guilty. We do this to protect the residents, because if you are guilty or if there is a situation, we want to make sure that everybody is safe. And we also want to protect you as the staff member, because it's really can be kind of cumbersome when you're working with your peers and they're kind of basically asking questions about how you provide cares and what you do. It can be very heartening. So we have you typically go home during that investigation. If the investigation shows that you are not guilty, you will get paid for the hours missed. However, if you are guilty from the situation, it depends on what the severity of the situation is, that there may be some repercussions or something that may still occur. If it's a resident, we're going to ensure that resident interventions are implemented and follow our resident-to-resident altercation flow sheet. Any resident-to-resident altercations, this could be verbal or physical, or even sexual, they need to be reported following our abuse policy. So I do need to be informed immediately. So once you report the potential for a caregiver misconduct, an investigation has to be begun. So we follow our abuse prevention investigation policy, and this is in Paychecks, and it's also on SharePoint and also in the policy and procedure binder. It's 14 glorious pages that I wrote, that step-by-step process. Sometimes we do need to contact the state surveying agency, and sometimes we do have to contact law enforcement as well. So time is super, super crucial. And again, I have to update this slide with some of the changes. But Shannon, who is now our administrator, is contacted during all of the investigations. So I will be in touch with her to talk about the investigations and what we need to do and if we are going to report it or not. I am also working with the director of nursing, which is Chrissy Hallback, and I am working with the department director that the staff member might be involved in as well. It could be in food service, it could be housekeeping, it could be any of them. So the reason that time is so crucial is in the event that the event causes serious bodily harm, we only have 2 hours to complete our initial investigation and get that submitted to the state of Wisconsin through their website. Any other event, we have no more than 24 hours. So it's really not a lot of time. And that clock begins from the moment that you, the staff member, tells your nurse. So in all reality, it moves pretty quickly. So that's why it's very crucial that when you see something, you say something, because we want to make sure that everyone is informed and that everyone is, so we can begin that investigation right away. So what do we do during an investigation? We literally interview anyone who has maybe had contact with that resident or with that staff member. So that's other staff, other residents, family visitors. We literally are talking to anyone and everyone and getting statements. And we typically do this through written statements from all of our witnesses. We may also collect any additional evidence, such as pictures or other items that might be important. And we're going to look at the residence chart for medication interactions, nursing notes, past incidents, and other possible connections. So why do we do this? Well, we work with a very vulnerable population, and bruises tend to kind of pop up, and sometimes our residents can't tell us where they came from. And if it's someone who's very vulnerable that can't talk to us about situations, we really have to take that to heart. So we really want to look at all of their notes, because maybe they hit their hand on the bed rail, or maybe they had a blood draw, or things of that nature. So all of that is taken into consideration when we are doing investigations. So what do we do to prevent? Bethany does a fantastic job with education, and sometimes you're kind of like, oh my gosh, that's so much education. But we work with the fact that we want you, that if one person doesn't understand something, then everybody doesn't. So we want to make sure that everybody is educated on certain policies and procedures. So we conduct an annual training every year. So this is not the first nor the last time you are going to hear about abuse, our abuse policy. We also introduce it to you staff that are new, so welcome. We do this because, one, it's a requirement, but the reason we continue to do it is we know that we're throwing a lot of stuff at you these next couple of days, and you're going to forget. So during an investigation, we make sure that we are reminding staff of the abuse policy, or if there are any other sorts of changes. Again, please remember that anyone working for Bethany or for Bethany is covered by the Affordable Care Act, so you are considered a mandated reporter. So what if you don't report? The law has imposed significant penalties not only for Bethany, but for you as well. So in general, you could be subject to a civil penalty up to $200,000, I'm sorry, face jail time, and you most likely are going to lose your job and not be able to work with vulnerable people ever again. We also have a no retaliation policy. So if you report an allegation as an employee, you cannot be retaliated upon. Employees have the right to file a complaint if they feel like they have been. We truly ask that you please reach out management if you feel that you're being retaliated on. You do have the right to contact the state of Wisconsin, but having state in here is also kind of cumbersome, and we all get kind of a little bit crazy during that time. But please seek out not only your director or another director if you feel like that you are being retaliated on, or for sure human resources. Again, if you have any questions regarding this, please make sure you reach out to me. I am happy to go through this with you, but like I said before, this isn't going to be the last time or the first time that you are hearing about our abuse policy. So thank you for taking the time and listening. Have a great day.